Today we are going to study the fourth chapter from geography, that is manufacturing industries. So without any delays, let's begin. Now, on the occasion of Diwali, Harish went to a market with his parents. They purchased shoes and clothes for him. His mother purchased utensils, sugar, tea, and diyas. Harish observed that the shops in the market were flooded with items for sale. He wondered how so many items could be made in such large quantities. His father explained that shoes, cloth, sugars are manufactured by machines in large industries. Some utensils are manufactured in small industries, while items like diyas are made by individual artisans in household industry. Now, do you have any ideas about these industries? If you know the examples, you can just comment down below in the comment box. Production of goods in large quantities after processing from raw materials to more valuable products is called manufacturing. It's basically turning the primary sector into the secondary sector. Do you know what the paper is manufactured from wood? How the paper is manufactured from wood? Sugar is from sugarcane, iron and steel from iron ore, and aluminium from bauxite, right? Do you also know that some types of clothes are manufactured from yarn, which itself is an industrial product? People employed in the secondary activities manufacture the primary materials into finished goods. This is what manufacturing means. The workers employed in steel factories, automobiles, breweries, textiles, bakeries fall into the second sector, that is the secondary sector. Some people are employed in providing services. In this chapter, we are mainly concerned with industries which fall in the secondary sector. We are going to study about the industries. The economic strength of a country is measured by the development of manufacturing industries. If your industry has bigger growth or it is showing growth, then your country's development or the GDP will also increase. It will also show growth. That's why there are the leading countries or all leading industrial nations as well. Why do you need manufacturing? Importance of manufacturing. This is obviously asked for 5 marks. Very easy. It first one is it helps in modernizing agriculture. It modernizes agriculture. How? Because it reduces the heavy dependence of people on agricultural income by providing them jobs in secondary and tertiary sector. It provides alternative jobs. It provides them tools, machineries, pesticides, insecticides, fertilizers, which could help modernize agriculture. Second one is industrial development is a precondition for eradication of unemployment because it is providing so much of jobs. It is required to eradicate unemployment and poverty in our country. This was the main philosophy behind the public sector industries and joint sector ventures. We are going to study about these in the next slides, but you already know about the public sector industries. They are aimed at providing employment. It is also aimed at bringing down regional disparities by establishing in different areas. Lot of times we see that the industries are established only in the urban areas, which creates regional disparities, or which are created or which are established in certain very big areas, like you will find in Gujarat or in Mumbai. But establishing them in rural, tribal, backward areas will help to bring down the regional disparities. The next one is the export of manufactured goods, which will bring foreign exchange. We'll get much more needed foreign exchange. Obviously, the words have been cut in the slide. It is foreign exchange. It brings much needed foreign exchange. Countries that transform their raw materials into a wide variety of furnished goods are prosperous. You take any country like assembling plants are there in China, US is a very big industrial economy. They're all prosperous. India's prosperity lies in increasing and diversifying its industries as quickly as possible. The next one would be agriculture and industry are not exclusive of each other. They are dependent. We have studied the interdependence of the sectors. They move hand in hand. For example, the agro industries in India have given a major boost to agriculture by raising its productivity. Agro industries like sugarcane industry, cotton industry, because there are industries, the raw material will be grown, right? The crop will be grown, and which gives jobs, which gives employment, which gives money to the farmer as well. They depend on the latter for raw materials and sell their products such as irrigation pumps, fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, plastic. This is PVC pipes, machines, tools. These are already explained that they are interdependent. Thus, development and competitiveness of manufacturing industry has not only assisted agriculturists in increasing their production but also made the process very efficient. Now, in the present day of globalization, our industry needs to be more efficient and competitive. Self sufficiency will not be enough. We have to create the goods which are in quality, which are at par in quality with those of international market. That is why we are struggling. We have to produce the goods which are as good as the international market goods. Now, for example, if you take Indian goods, they're sold at very less prosperous economic countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and all. If there is an automobile company, why it is not sold in more prospering nation like US, like European countries, right? I'm not saying the quality is not good. I'm saying that we should be at par in quality. Now, what is the contribution of industry to national economy? This is a number. Over the last 2 decades, the share of manufacturing sector has stagnated at 17% of the GDP out of 27%, in which there is 10% for mining, quarrying, and electricity and gas. This is much lower comparing to the some East Asian countries where it is 25 to 35. The rate in manufacturing over the last decade has been 7% per annum. That is also rate very less. The desired growth rate would be like 12% for the next decade. Since 2003, manufacturing is once again growing at a rate of 9 to 10%. Now we already know it that the tertiary sector has more emphasis than the secondary sector. But in countries like Singapore, if you take example of Singapore, the country is doing very well in the secondary. That's why the East Asian economy is taken here. With appropriate policy interventions by the government and renewed efforts by the industry to improve productivity, we can actually achieve our target of the next decade. This book was written, we have still not achieved it, by the way. The National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council, that is NMCC, has been set up with this objective. There is a council called National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council, which prevents the industries from fighting each other, which creates them identity, which helps them market, which helps them counter black marketing or irrational marketing. Now, industrial location. We have studied about if you want to set up an industry, what are the things you need, factors of production in the village of Palampur in the last year, right? Ninth economics. Now, industrial locations are complex in nature. These are influenced by availability of raw material, labor, capital, power, and market. Wherever these are available at cheap rate, that is where you will have your industrial location, right? It's rarely possible to find all these factors available at one place. So, what do you do? Consequently, manufacturing activity tends to locate at the most appropriate place where all the factors of industrial location are either available or can be arranged at lower cost. Now, after an industrial activity starts, people come there, it becomes a city, urbanization follows. Sometimes industries are located in or near the cities, normally outside the cities. Thus industrialization and urbanization go hand in hand. If there is industrialization, the urbanization is to follow. directly proportional. Then what happens? The urbanization, that is, the cities provide markets. They provide such as services such as banking, insurance, transport, labor, consultants, and many industries tend to come together to make use of the advantages offered by the urban centers, known as agglomeration economy. Agglomeration economy is one place where you will get all these things. Gradually, a large industrial agglomeration takes place. In the pre-independence period, most manufacturing units were located in places like Mumbai, Kolkata, and Chennai, that is, keeping in mind the overseas trade. Consequently, there emerged certain pockets of industrially developed urban centers surrounded by huge agricultural rural hinterland. Wherever there is agricultural land, there you will have the industries also based. You will take the northern plains in UP, Bihar, West Bengal, Jharkhand. You will see the industries based in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and West Bengal. Now, what is the connection of industry to market linkage? Now, you can see here what we do is we use inputs, raw materials, component parts, and factors of production are used, right? They are transported to the factory and you produce something called product. It is also transported to the market. Whatever you make a profit out of it, that is money. Again, you invest it in buying the inputs, and it continues like a chain. It continues like a chain. You start with raw materials, or let us say factors of production. You transport it to the factory, you produce an output, you transport it to the market, you sell it in the market, you make money. Again, you buy factors of production, right? Now, in this case, where will be your ideal location of an industry? Now look at this is where your ideal location of an industry will be, right? Where cost of production at site is lower. Decision to locate factory at site will be here. Cost of distribution of production will be lower, and cost of obtaining raw materials at site. All these things are available in certain place, which will be the ideal location of an industry. The key to decision of the factory location is the least cost. The thing that they are worried is least any cost. It can be factory or factors of production or any factor of production. For that sake, government policies and specialized labor also influence. There are some countries where we have studied in the making of global world, where the companies started to come and establish in countries like China, right? That also has an effect because the country is least cost effective. Classification of industries, this we have studied in the 8th standard, but I'll go. You can have on the basis of source of raw material used. Based on the source of raw materials used, we have agro based, mineral based. In agro based, the raw materials are all agriculture based, such as cotton, woolen, jute, silk, rubber, sugar, tea, coffee, and edible oil. Whereas mineral, it is all the raw materials from mining, like iron and steel, cement, petrochemical. In agro based, there is also a marine based also. Marine based is also with it. According to the role, there are two type. One is basic or key industry, another one is consumer industry. What is basic or key industry? Basic or key industry, where they supply their products or raw materials to manufacture other goods. For example, iron and steel manufacture tools for other, aluminium smelting, copper smelting. You need iron and steel. Consumer industries that produce goods for direct use, like sugar, toothpaste, paper. Toothpaste is not used as a raw material for to produce any other thing, so it's directly consumer. On the basis of capital investment, investment is money what you put in. A small scale industry is defined with reference to the maximum investment allowed on the assets of a unit. This limit has changed over a period of time. At present, the maximum investment allowed is rupees 1 crore. On the basis of ownership, with this we have already studied, but let's revise. A public sector owned and operated by the government agencies. Now examples given here are strictly economic, that is BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electrical Limited, and Steel Authority of India Limited, SAIL. Private sector are owned and operated by individuals or a group of individuals. For example, Tisco, Bajaj, Daba, Reliance, you can add it. Joint sector, which are jointly run by the state and individuals, like Oil India Limited, is jointly owned by the public and private sector. Now, this is where private will have certain portions, private and public. This is what they are, right, trying to create, the public and the private mode. Cooperative sector are owned and operated by the producers or suppliers of raw materials, or can be workers or both. They pool in the resources and share the profits or losses proportionately, such as the sugar industry in Maharashtra and coir industry in Kerala. Can be the Amul, right? It's Amul also an example of the cooperative sector. Coir industry in Kerala is very famous, and sugar industry in Maharashtra is also very famous. Now, these are the examples for that: the public sector, the joint sector, the cooperative, and the private. Based on the weight of raw material and finished goods, there are two types, that is heavy industry such as iron and steel. The raw material for iron and steel will be heavy, and the finished goods will also be heavy. Light industries such as they produce electronic items like transistors, chips, they will be very light. Agro-based industries, we're going to study some of the examples from these type of classification. First one is agro-based industries. We're going to study about the textile industry in this. We're going to study cotton and jute. Textile industry occupies unique position in the Indian economy because it contributes significantly to industrial production, that is 14%. Employment of 35 million persons directly, second largest after agriculture. Why? Because when the British were there, we were made to grow cotton, jute, obviously for their benefit. Now it has created, we are following it. Foreign exchange earnings about 24.6%. These numbers are just indicative numbers, they are more or less, so I don't suggest you by hearting the numbers. Contributes 4% to GDP. It is the only industry in the country which is self reliant and complete in the value chain from raw material to the finished good. What does that mean? That means this is the chain, right, of production. It starts from fiber, spinning, weaving, knitting, dyeing, finishing, garment manufacture, right? Now you can see here, these are the raw materials that are used. They are individually also valuable. Raw fiber is also valuable, yarn itself is a raw material, fabric itself is a raw material, garments anyhow it goes to the market, so it is self reliant and complete in the value chain. Cotton textiles were produced with hand spinning and handloom weaving techniques. After the 18th century, power looms came. Now we use power looms. We did not have power looms, we were hand weaving. Our traditional industries suffered a setback during the colonial period because we could not compete with the mill made cloth, which used power looms, which could produce faster clothes than compared to what the hand weaving could produce. As on 30th November 2011, there were 1946 cotton and human-made fiber textile milk in the country. About 80% of these are in the private sector, and the rest in the public and the cooperative sector. Now, if you track the news due to the corona outbreak recently in Mysuru, that a textile factory, a very big textile factory, which gave nearly employment to 3,500 people, got shut down. Do you know about it? If you know, please comment it in the comment box. Apart from this, there are several thousand small factories with 4 to 10 looms. In the early years, the cotton textile industry was concentrated in the cotton growing belt of Maharashtra and Gujarat. That is where you will get the Deccan Plateau, right? The trap availability. Why? Because the now this is a question. If you let's say we'll put a question here. Why is, we'll call the bird back? Why is the cotton is industry concentrated in the belt of Maharashtra and Gujarat? Because first one is the availability of raw material, because it is the belt where the cotton is grown. Cotton is grown most, right? Second one, market. Why Mumbai? Transport. Everything is there. You have the land, the sea, the air. Third one, port, Mumbai port, labor, cheaper, moist climate. So these things matter. Why they are all concentrated there. The industry has close links with agriculture and provides a living to the farmers, such as cotton ball pluckers, workers engaged in ginning, spinning, weaving, dyeing, designing, packaging, tailoring, sewing. Now, these are the stages to prepare a cotton fabric where all cannot be done with machine altogether. They you need manual power as well. So they provide employment. The industry, by creating demands, supports many other industry such as chemical and dye. You need for dyeing, right? Mill stores, packaging materials, engineering works, yeah, machines. So it is like complementing the other industries as well. While spinning continues to be centralized in Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Tamil Nadu, weaving is highly decentralized to provide scope for incorporating the traditional silk. For example, if you want cotton, silk, zari, embroidery, it can be found in rural areas like Kanchipuram silk. It's very unique to that area, like that. Cotton also we have in North Karnataka, where there are places where the cotton sari, we call it ilkal sari in Karnataka. Ilkal sari, if you know about it, you can tell me more. India has world class production in spinning, but weaving supplies low quality of fabric, as it cannot use much of the high quality yarn produced in the country. So weaving is done by handloom, powerloom, and mills. Yarn is exported to Japan, right? The handspun khadi provides large scale employment to weavers in their homes and cottage industry as well. If you have been to Pilikula, where you have seen the traditional house, a traditional village, you might have seen the hand spun khadi. The first successful textile mill was established in Mumbai in 1854. The two world wars were fought in Europe. India was a British colony. There was demand for cloth in UK. Hence, they gave a boost to the development of the cotton textile industry. Who doesn't know it? We have studied a whole chapter on it. Now, this is official numbers of what is um, the power looms, the hand looms, number of mills, right? India exports yarn to Japan. Other importers of cotton goods from India are US, UK, Russia, France, East European countries, Nepal, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and African countries. India has the second largest installed capacity of spindles in the world, with 43.13 million spindles after China. Since the mid 80s, the spinning sector has received a lot of attention. We have a large share in the world trade of cotton yarn, accounting for one fourth of the total trade. However, our trade in garments is only 4%. Why? Our spinning mills are competitive at the global level and capable of using all the fibers we produce. The weaving and knitting processing units cannot use much. There are some large and modern factories in these segments, but most of the production is in fragmented small units which cater to the local market. This mismatch is a major drawback of the country, for the industry as well. Now, you have to see here cotton textiles. Will go one by one. Chennai, Madurai, Coimbatore. Coimbatore is a very famous one in South. Coimbatore is also called as the Manchester of South. Then you go to Pune, Aurangabad, Surat, Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad is called the Manchester of India. And there are other places as well, right? This is where the areas, because this is where you will find the Deccan Plateau. So they are concentrated here. Jain, Devas, Indore, Jalgaon, Wardha, Porbandar, Rajkot. In south, you will find in Coimbatore. In Karnataka also, there is a place called Davangere. If you go to Davangere also, you will find it's called Manchester of Karnataka. Yarn is sold at rupees 85 per kg. If it is sold as a trouser, it fetches rupees 800 per kg. Why? Because value is added at every stage from fiber to yarn to make it as a garment. So it is sold at 800 rupees. If you buy, let's say, a Raymond's suit, right, starting from 20,000, the cotton won't be that much, right? That cotton will be less. Then it will be added, the fabric is created, the design, the tailoring, suiting your personal demands. That's what makes it unique. The second one that we are going to study is the jute textiles. India is the largest producer of raw jute and jute goods and stands at second place after Bangladesh. There were about 80 jute mills in India in 2010 and 11. Most of these are located in West Bengal, mainly along the banks of Hooghly River. This question is also important for 5. Why are the jute textiles located on the banks of Hooghly River? Because first, proximity of the jute producing areas. The jute producing areas are West Bengal, Bihar. Inexpensive water transport, you have Hooghly inland transport. Supported by a good network of railways, roadways, waterways to facilitate movement of raw materials to the mills, abundant water for processing raw jute. You need water to process the raw jute. Cheap labor from West Bengal and adjoining states of Bihar, Odisha, and UP. That's where the labor comes in. Kolkata as a city supports for banking, insurance, and port facilities. So these are the reasons why the jute is concentrated in the Hooghly Basin. Important, guys. This question is important. A lot of times they ask this question. Again, for an MCQ, the first jute mill was set up near Kolkata in 1859 at Rishra. To partition in 1947, the jute mills remained in India, but three-fourths of the jute producing area went to Bangladesh, that is East Pakistan. Challenges faced by the industry. There are challenges like in the international market, there are other people as well, like Bangladesh, Brazil, Philippines, Egypt, Thailand are producing jute. So we have obviously challenges from competition from those countries, and there is synthetic substitute. Internal demand has been on the increase due to the government policy of mandatory use of jute packaging. National jute policy in 2005 makes it mandatory to use jute packaging. So, to stimulate the demand, the products need to be diversified. The national jute policy was created with an objective of increasing productivity, improving quality, ensuring good prices to the jute farmers. Normally, we have US, Canada, Russia, UA, and United Arab Republic, UK, and Australia as the importers. The growing global concern for environmental friendly biodegradable materials has once again opened an opportunity for jute products. You might have seen now the jute products are in demand. Jute cloths, jute bags, and jute made craft items are very, very preferred. They're not expensive also. Sugar industry is also one of the agro-based industry. We have studied about sugar in agriculture chapter. India stands second as the world producer of sugar but occupies in the first place for the production of gur and khansari. The raw material used in this industry is bulky and in haulage its sucrose content reduces. What does this mean is if you have, let's say, your farm at A and factory is at B and the distance is somewhere at 100 kilometer, right? What happens is if you take a juicy sugar cane and transport it to the factory, the sucrose content will be down. It will, the heat will suck up all the sucrose content. So the factories are always located near the sugar cane field. If you have noticed, where should the ideally the mills located? In 2010-11, there were 662 sugar mills in the country in UP, Bihar, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Gujarat, along with Punjab, Haryana, and Madhya Pradesh. Now, UP is the largest producer of sugarcane, so you will see it there. In recent years, there is a tendency of the mills to shift and concentrate in the southern and the western states, especially in Maharashtra. This is because of the cane produced here has a higher sucrose content. Why? Because the soil produces it like that. The cooler climate also ensures a longer crushing season. Like, let's say you're scorching heat and you have to crush the sugar cane. Will you be able to do it? No. Probably it will be not so easy. Moreover, the cooperatives are more successful in these states. There is cooperative sector of sugar in Maharashtra. Challenges include the seasonal nature. It is very seasonal, cannot be done throughout the year. Old and efficient methods of production, even today, good, if you go to villages, is not produced with the help of machines. It is produced with, let's say, ox rotating around and producing. It takes a lot of work. It's a very, very labor intensive industry. Transport delay in reaching cane to the factories and the need to maximize the use of baggage. Now let's get into the iron and steel industry. We have finished the agro-based industries, that is cotton, jute, and sugarcane. Now comes the industries based on mining, right? That is iron and steel industry. Heavy, key, basic, call it, but it's there. The iron and steel industry is the basic industry. Again, a question why? Because for every other industry, this industry produces raw materials. That's the reason. Steel is needed to manufacture a variety of engineering goods, construction material, defense, medical, telephonic, scientific equipment, and a variety of consumer goods. Now, actually, the consumption of steel and production of steel often is regarded as the index of country's development. If your country is doing really good, that means steel production and consumption is more. What happens? Iron and steel is a heavy industry because the raw material is very well heavy, bulky. Finished goods are also heavy and bulky, entailing heavy transportation taxes, that is cost. Now, because the transportation is very costly, now having a steel industry is not a easy one. Iron ore, coking coal, and limestone are required in the ratio of approximately 4 is to 2 is to 1 to actually prepare. Iron ore, coking coal, and limestone required in the ratio of approximately 4 is to 2 is to 1. Some quantities of manganese are also required to harden the steel. Now, where should the steel plants be located? Remember that the finished products also need an efficient transport network. So, they need to be in a place where it is useful. In 2010-11, with 72.2 million tons of steel, India ranked fourth among the world. India is the largest producer of sponge iron. In 2011, per capita consumption of steel in the country was only around 49 kilo per annum against the world average of 182 kilo. Don't worry about this number. Now, this is how the manufacturing of steel is done. You have the transport of raw material to plant, that is the iron ore. Then the iron ore is melted, limestone is fluxed, which is added, slag is removed, coke is burned to heat the core. Very scientific. I may not be probably able to explain what the reasons or what the exact methods are. Molten materials poured into molds called pigs, that's called pig iron. Then it comes to pig iron is purified by melting and oxidizing the impurities. That's where manganese, nickel, and chromium are added. Then comes shaping the metal. You start rolling it, pressing, casting, and forging. Then comes the iron and steel from here to here. Normally, the question won't come on this, and these are the areas where the steel plants. This is where it is important for map. You got to locate it in the map. Last year, this question came in the pre-board. What is a mini steel plant and an integrated steel plant? Mini steel plants are smaller, have electric furnaces, use steel scrap and sponge iron. They have re-rollers that use steel ingots as well. They produce mild and alloy steel of given specification. It's a mini steel plant. An integrated steel plant is large, handles everything in one complex from putting together raw materials to steel making, rolling, and shaping. Just if you know, you can answer, is KIOCL an integrated steel plant or a mini steel plant? And we are going to locate the places: Salem, Bhadravati, Vijayanagar, Bhilai, Vishakhapatnam, Rourkela, Jamshedpur, Bokaro, Burnpur, and Durgapur. Not all. We are going to locate a very few in the steel industry. I'm going to tell you after the chapter finishes. Now, most of the public sector undertakings market their steel through Steel Authority of India Limited sale. In 1950s, China and India produced almost same quantity of steel. Today, China is the largest producer of steel. China is also the world's largest consumer of steel. In 2004, India was the largest exporter of steel, which accounted 2.5 to 5%. Chota Nagpur Plateau region has the maximum concentration of iron and steel industries. It is largely because of the region which has development for that industry. These include low cost of iron ore, high grade raw materials in proximity, cheap labor, and vast growth potential in the market. That's why you have, what do you call, availability of iron ore in the Chotanagpur Plateau. Though India is an important iron and steel producing country in the world, we are not able to perform to our full potential largely. Why? Why? Because there are a lot of reasons. One, high cost and limited availability of coking coal. We do not have coking coal. Second one, low productivity of labor. Our labor does not work as it used to work or where it should work. Third one, irregular supply of energy. We need energy. We do not have. Fourth one is poor infrastructure. That is why we cannot have, despite, right? Remember, despite having all the facilities, we are not able to perform to our full potential. We also import good quality steel from other countries. However, the overall production of steel is sufficient to meet our domestic demand. Liberalization and foreign direct investment have given a boost to the industry with the efforts of private entrepreneurs. There is a need to allocate resources for research and development to produce steel more computatively. That's where we're going to say goodbye. It's being a very, very long video. I know I covered a lot of things in a single video. I suggest you watch it very carefully. Then I'll go for the explanation later on. If you have any doubts, be ready with the doubts. We'll meet in the webinar. So thank you so much for watching.